Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September Life Unites Us webinar, Adaptive Strategies to Engage and Support Women in Recovery. We're so excited to see you all here today. As you're filing in, please feel free to use the chat to drop your name, the organization you work for, where you're calling in from. We always like to know who's in the room with us. And so I'll go ahead and dive in. So I'll get us started with our agenda. We'll be starting with some housekeeping, going over a campaign overview for anyone that might be new to Life Unites Us, going over our speaker introduction and diving into her presentation, and then wrapping up with question and answer at the very end. So to get us started, this webinar will be recorded and a copy of the presentation will be available on the Life Unites Us website. All attendees will be muted throughout the course of the presentation, but you are welcome to use the Q&A button at the top of your screen to ask any questions that you might have. The chat is also available for use. To adjust your view and see all speakers, panelists, click View at the top of your screen and then select Speaker or Gallery. To access closed captioning, click More, select Language and Speech, and choose Turn on Live Captions. So with that, I will go into a little bit of a campaign overview for anyone that might be new to Life Unites Us. Life Unites Us is an evidence-based behavior change public health intervention designed to reduce addiction-related stigma of substance use disorder in the state of Pennsylvania. We are a statewide digital media campaign. The campaign is a collaborative effort between Shatterproof Penn State and the Public Good Project, and we are funded through DDAP. We have three overall goals. We're working to increase knowledge about substance use disorder and that recovery is not only possible, but probable. We're improving attitudes towards individuals with SUD, and we're also working to strengthen the capacity, both at the organizational level and individual level, of the folks that are already working on the ground and responding to the crisis. We have certain pillars of work. We are working to engage with the community. So at the core of our work, we're really hoping to get the community feedback into the campaign and to guide the voice of the campaign. To that extent, we have a community impact committee who works to provide feedback on a quarterly basis. And so far in Pennsylvania, we've partnered with close to 200 organizations who really are champions of the Life Unites Us work. In terms of content sharing, the root of our campaign is storytelling. We work to collect stories from individuals in recovery, people who have been impacted by substance use disorder in one way or another. And the campaign is changing attitudes by promoting that messaging and speaking to hope and recovery. And in terms of education, you can be an advocate for the campaign by spearheading the digital assets that we're creating, the stories that we're creating. And also we offer technical assistance through webinar opportunities like this one. So just to get an example of some of the content that we've put together, you can visit our story library on the Life Unites Us page. You can see some of the posts that we've put together, and to sign up as a partner, Jayla will drop in the partner form in the chat so that you all can check out our website and check us out online. And now I will dive into our speaker introduction. So I'm so happy to welcome and be joined by Dr. Shavitz today. Dr. Shavitz is the Executive Director for Women for Sobriety, a nonprofit executive speaker and author of Broken is a Gift. She is a Doctor of Education and Organizational Leadership. Michelle has more than 25 years of experience in nonprofit advancement and over a decade of experience encouraging and rebuilding the rebuilding of lives and finding purpose. So Dr. Shavitz, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm coming to you from Maryland. As she said, I am Michelle Shavitz. I'm the Executive Director of Women for Sobriety, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But today I'm here and I'm so blessed to be able to share some information with you. When I was asked to give a speech or a webinar on adaptive strategies, I was thinking to myself, absolutely, I would love to. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. My life's work is to support other women in recovery. I am a person in recovery myself, so I have lived experience. I have a deck for the webinar, but I can assure you that I'm going to be adding in some real world experiences, some lived experiences, and then having some Q&A at the end. So please, this is very interactive, and I want everyone to get something out of this. We're talking today about adaptive strategies, and most of you probably know what adaptive strategies are, but it refers to methods and approaches, behaviors, and techniques that individuals use to effectively cope with negative challenges or stressful situations. These strategies are considered adaptive when they help the individual manage their emotions, thoughts, behaviors in a more healthy and constructive way. And it ultimately leads to positive outcomes for personal growth. But today we're talking specifically about adaptive strategies to support women in recovery. We're talking about techniques, problem-solving skills, social supports, practices, and other kinds of activities that will roll out during this presentation to show you how different a woman's journey is through substance use disorder, through treatment, through recovery, and through long-term recovery. The strategies that we're going to talk about today are helpful in promoting resilience, managing stress, navigating difficult circumstances that are really geared towards women and are women specific. In the context of recovery from substance use disorder, adaptive strategies can involve healthier coping mechanisms, building a strong support system, practicing self-care, attending therapy. There is no one size fits all for recovery, right? Recovery is not linear. And as we're talking about a woman's progression of substance use disorder, very similar pattern to men, but there are very, very different risk factors involved. And we're talking today a little bit more about specific barriers to treatment, specific barriers to recovery, and specific barriers for women asking for help. And one of the questions that I want to pose to the group, and I want you to just think about this, when you think about the pathways to recovery, and when you think of those recovering from substance use disorder, do you think that men and women differ in that regard? Surely there's a lot of differences in men and women, but I bet some of the things we're going to talk about today might be very surprising to you. The next thing that I want to talk about is how a woman is vastly different from a man in that define recovery. If you are not a person who is in recovery or who has substance use disorder, the best way to describe it to you, if you have not gone through it, is that it's a very dark and harrowing experience. You find yourself trapped in a never-ending cycle of despair, self-destruction. There's a lot of, believe it or not, it's a love-hate relationship, and there's a lot of comfort. For me, my choice of addiction was alcohol, and I experienced this in a very rapid progression, and I grew up and I didn't have a problem with alcohol, and I hit my 20s and I didn't have a problem with alcohol. And it wasn't until I hit my 30s, I was married, I had children, things were going along great in my career. I decided that I wanted to go to a doctoral program, and I can remember a time when I could have a mixed drink sitting on the deck, relaxing in the evening, with my husband, and then getting to the point where, within months, I just wanted to feel that relaxation, that feeling of I don't have to deal with anything, the feeling of comfort that bottle gave me. It truly kept dragging me deeper and deeper until I found myself taking a bottle and tying it up and lowering it over my deck and then pulling it back up at night so that my husband wouldn't know how much I drank. it was really, really a life-changing experience. And I really swallowed myself into an abyss. My days began with pounding headaches and dry, mouth and a sense of dread. And but I am here to tell you that through the adaptive strategies and through different pathways of recovery, there is hope. And I can tell you that the insatiable cravings that I had and the temporary relief that I got is nowhere near the beautiful full life that I get in recovery, also helping other women to recover. I believe that's my passion. I believe that's my purpose. I know that's my passion. That's why I'm here today. So instead of reaching for a bottle with trembling hands and anticipation and fear today, I reach out to other women and say to them, we can help you. I can help you. What can I do? And how can we do this together? Because you are not alone. Next. So women and substance use disorder, it develops pretty much like a man's, but we are more susceptible to cravings. We are more susceptible to increasing our use over time. And we are also increasingly susceptible to socioeconomic barriers to getting help and support. Women with alcohol use disorders have death rates 50 to 100% higher than men do. Now that you think to yourself, 50 to 100%, that's a huge percentage. Where does that lie? That's because we are really truly unable to get to the exact number of how many alcohol related deaths we have, because most of the time it is also linked to other health conditions, or it has caused other health conditions, and then that becomes an underlying factor. It leads to alcohol related accidents. It leads to heart disease, stroke, and liver disease. Next. So what kinds of drugs do women use? Alcohol is number one. That is the number one drug of choice for women. Illegal and harmfully used prescription drugs is the second. Usually non-medical use of opioids and tranquilizers among women is comparable to men, but at this rate, it is eclipsing the use that men have. Cigarettes is another one that is high on the list of what kinds of drugs women use. And women in particular over the age of 40 or 45 and older are more likely to be prescribed opioid painkillers and are more likely to use them long term more than um, any other group that there is. So if you look at the statistics of the rising number of people who are developing substance use disorder, it truly is women 45 and over. Women also tend to increase their consumption rapidly. So we're talking about initiation, the initiation of substance use disorder. Women are more likely to use substances to cope with stress, trauma, and mental health issues. I can tell you from personal experience that I went on a vacation with family and I remember having a drink on the beach. And I remember when I got home, it was so much more work to come home and have to deal with kids and luggage and, picking up animals and all these other things going on, that it was like, why did I even bother going on vacation? Because it's a lot of work when you come back. And I remember chasing that vacation brain, but it was chasing that feeling of numbness that alcohol gave me and that freedom to believe in my head that I was allowed to let go of some of my responsibilities as a mom or a wife or a professional. And that really truly was the lies that I told myself. And it was my escape. It was my self-preservation, self-medication, and my escape. And that is how my initiation started into substance use disorder. Women also have influencing factors with society and peer expectations. Women are more susceptible to drink or to use drugs when their peers are using them and they mirror they mirror what others are doing around them more so than men. And I can tell you, for me, that was true because I was a chameleon. I wanted you to like me so bad that I would do whatever you were doing to fit in. I don't know if anybody can identify with that, but that's what happens when you are trying to find yourself. You're not comfortable in your own skin. You're not confident in who you are. And I truly wasn't. And I kept trying to find happiness externally. The age of initiation is often younger in women compared to men. So even though the fastest growing demographics is 45 and older for women, truly the vast majority of women who are initiating their substance use is far younger than men who are initiating their substance use. Women are more susceptible to cravings and the return of use, and women are more susceptible to rapidly go through the key phases of the addiction cycle to get to the side where they're in a full-blown addiction. And truly, it happens more rapidly for women than men. Next. So if we're moving into the experimental phase, women initially use substances in a social setting. We just talked about that, but they also continue to use and develop a tolerance and begin using in larger amounts far more frequently than men. Think about that. So a woman gets a taste of something, it makes them feel good, and they just take off with it, right? It's working for me. And whatever the case may be, I am running with this. I use more frequently, I develop a tolerance faster. And that's very interesting to me because we've always thought the opposite, a woman can't handle their liquor, or she's a lightweight or something like that. We develop a tolerance far faster for substances than men. When you're talking about regular use over time, women may begin to use substances on a regular basis, leading to physical and psychological dependence far faster than men. They also experience negative consequences such as health problems, relationship difficulties, or legal issues far faster than men. Next. We're moving into the addiction phase. So after you initiated your use and you tried it out, and then you've realized that this is really taking the edge off, or this is working for me, or this is making me feel more relaxed or more confident, you slide right into addiction, and substance use becomes more compulsive and out of control. And women meet the criteria for the diagnosis of substance use disorder far faster than men. It manifests its behavior such as cravings, loss of control, and continued use despite all of the negative consequences. Next. So, talking about the biological differences, there are definitely biological differences in men and in women. And when we're looking at this, we're talking about several different biological differences. Hormonal fluctuation is number one on the list. So women have experienced hormonal fluctuations throughout their menstrual cycle, which can impact their response to drugs and alcohol. For example, estrogen has been shown to increase the rewarding effects of drugs, while progesterone may decrease drug-seeking behavior. Let me say that again, because this blew me away. Estrogen can increase the reward effects of drugs. Progesterone decreases the drug-seeking behavior. So as a woman's metabolism and body is very different and breaks down these things in her system different than men, women tend to have a higher percentage, sorry ladies, of body fat compared to men, but it's true, which impacts how the drugs are metabolized in their system. Women also tend to have slower metabolism. They utilize drugs and alcohol, and it can lead to higher levels of drugs actually staying in their bloodstream for a longer period of time. The brain chemistry of a woman is very different than men. So women and men have very different levels of neurotransmitters in the brain, which can impact their response to drugs and alcohol. For example, women tend to have higher levels of serotonin, which can influence their vulnerability to depression and anxiety, which are both risk factors for substance use disorder. And overall, these biological differences make women much, much more vulnerable and susceptible to substance use disorder and requires different treatment approaches compared to men. It's very important that when we're looking at this from a global perspective, that we consider that our healthcare professionals need to look at these differences when assessing and treating women for substance use disorder. Next. So as we're looking at the psychological and social factors that from women who are experiencing substance use disorder, we face very unique psychological and social challenges that can exacerbate the struggles with addiction. Some of them include social factors. We talked already about how women like to mirror their peers when they're out or when they're doing things. Women with substance use disorder face higher rates of social stigma and discrimination as compared to men. It's like, I know when I started to think about recovery and when I got into recovery, I just thought they were going to teach me how to drink like a lady. I didn't ever really want to stop. I just thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And so the societal expectations and stereotypes for men and women are vastly different and make it far more difficult for women to seek help than their male counterparts. Additionally, women may be more likely to face financial instability and lack of access to healthcare and other social determinants of health that can contribute to their continuance of substance use disorder. They have higher rates of co-occurring mental health disorders. Women with substance use disorder are more likely to have co-occurring mental health disorders because such as depression, PTSD, anxiety, and eating disorders. The mental health issues can exacerbate substance use disorder and create this vicious cycle where you're utilizing the substance to self-medicate, and it's actually exacerbating your mental health issues and making it far more challenging for women to recover. Trauma. Many women with substance use disorder have a history of trauma and or abuse, childhood abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, family issues, trafficking. These traumatic experiences contribute to the development of the substance use disorder as a coping mechanism to numb emotional pain and distress. And to be quite frank with you, when I was utilizing substances to make myself feel better, it was absolutely self-medicating. And mine wasn't earmarked towards one specific event or occurrence in my life. It was multiple things that compounded on me, where I felt like I had to do it all. Women put the weight of the world on their back and think that they have to do it all. They have to take care of the family. They have to take care of themselves. Most of the time, it is a factor that contributes greatly to the continuing use of substances. There is also the social stigma, which we talked and touched on a little bit, but women who struggle with substance use disorder face stigma and judgment far more frequently from friends and family than men do. Friends and family judge women far quicker for their substance use than men's friends and family do. This can lead to immediate shame, guilt, and women retreat faster than men. Isolating and hiding your use and using alone is far more frequent in women than in men, which further fuels the addiction process. And overall, again, these factors, there is a lot more information out there. I am truly just scratching the surface of what we're talking about as far as psychological and social factors. Next. Socioeconomic barriers. So when we talk about the barriers that women have, again, vast differences. So women facing substance use disorder often encounter a range of socioeconomic barriers that make it really challenging for them to navigate their own addiction process and access appropriate treatment and support. Some of the barriers, again, just scratching the surface: lack of financial resources. Women with substance use disorder struggle to afford the cost of treatment, medications, therapy, and other necessary services and resources. And this can create a barrier to accessing quality care and support. More women than men experience unstable housing and homelessness when using substances. They face homelessness almost twice as much as men when they are in their addiction. And for them to access treatment and maintain their recovery, it is nearly I don't want to say impossible because we know that's not the case, but it's twice as less likely as men. The lack of social support that women get who especially are coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds is truly one of the factors that contribute to intense use and misuse. One of the things that I really wanted to dig into a little bit, though, is the lack of supportive relationships that women have. And truly, it is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Women experience so much shame and guilt that they share what they're going through far less than men do. Now, again, this really shocked me because I thought, well, women talk about their feelings and tell people things and want to talk things through. But in reality, we hide our substance use far more than men do. And we isolate and we become hopeless and we do not want to be judged. And we have this burden of so much shame and guilt that when we retreat and we hide it from our loved ones, right? Remember, we get judged first by friends and family, leading to our retreat, leading to our isolation, and leading to our hopelessness, all of which makes a woman far more financially dependent upon others. Another huge factor is that women spend far more time on childcare than men do. On average, women spend 3 times more energy and resources on childcare activities as compared to men. Meaning, women are either caring for the child, finding childcare for the child, picking up or dropping off their children. Now, I'm not saying anything negative. This is just statistics that I'm saying, right? This is not bashing men whatsoever. This is just giving you the facts. 3 times more effort and energy and resources on childcare than men. Single mothers, in particular, bear a significant burden when it comes to childcare responsibilities. So, if you're looking at the Census Bureau, 9.8 million single moms in the US alone, and many of them, the vast majority, more than 80% of them, are in charge of childcare, responsible for everything that has to do with their children. And most of them are doing it without a partner to share the load. That has a direct impact on employment. So the unequal distribution of childcare is a direct reason for women not having stable employment. So think about it this way. If a woman is more likely to have to handle the childcare for their children without support, it's going to impact their ability to get gainful employment, long-term employment. So it does have a significant impact on the opportunities for earnings. Women are more likely to reduce their work hours or leave work early to take care of children or leave the workforce altogether, which leads to lower earnings, fewer career advancements, unequal distribution of employment opportunities. And all of these plays an integral role in the women getting the help that they need. Next. So when we look at treatment, we talked, and I touched a little bit on this. Women face unique barriers seeking treatment from substance use disorders such as stigma, lack of access to care, or child care responsibilities. It's important for treatment to address specific needs of women. We talked about the needs of women, trauma, very gender specific programming, and also co-occurring mental health issues. Next. If we're looking at the treatment approaches, we are looking at the fact that recovery is not linear. It is different for everyone. No, there is no one size fits all, but it is statistically proven that gender-specific treatment approaches for women work best. Women helping other women, right? And I think that when we look across the board of the social support that we have for these gender specific approaches, there is a more likelihood to not for a woman not to return to use than if a woman didn't have gender specific treatment. There's also trauma informed care, and there is also holistic and integrative therapies. It is shown that when a woman has gender specific treatment, has an added component of trauma informed care, dealing with the pains of the past and their history and the trauma that has happened in their lives. And when a woman starts to look at themselves as someone who is capable and competent and worthy of taking care of themselves, they start to incorporate holistic and integrative therapies into their recovery. And those are the approaches that work best for a woman. Next. So, what motivates a woman to stop using drugs and alcohol? Their children, their significant other, family members, their friends, and it could be a million different reasons. But the number one reason that a woman will stop their use is their children and their significant other. So I know for me, that was not exactly the case for me. So I am, I guess, an anomaly, or I'm not in this group. I am other reasons, right? And sharing just a little bit about what my other reason was is that I did not intend on stopping. Like I said, I thought I was going to treatment so that I could learn to drink like a lady, so that I could figure out how other people do this. And I wanted to drink more than I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to drink more than I wanted to be a wife or a professional. I wanted to drink more than I wanted to breathe. And then that led to me going back to reusing. And once I did, it was like a roller coaster ride that I could not get off of. And it wasn't until I was incarcerated, that's right, incarcerated, that I found a reason to recover, because I can assure you that I don't institutionalize well. It was not a fun experience for me, but it's what I needed, and it's how I got sober. It is how I recovered. So there was no person, there was no job, there was no friend, there was no one that was going to tell me how to recover or entice me to recover the way that I was able to recover when everything was stripped of me. Truly, truly everything. And I found recovery all by myself in the middle of, a jail cell. Okay. But when I look back on my experience and me just saying, okay, I am ready to recover, it was truly because a seed had been planted by other women that came into the detention facility that I was housed in, and they came in and talked to us and shared their personal story. So I may have been sitting there by myself when I made that ultimate decision, but it was because of other women reaching their hand out to me and saying, we can recover together and you don't have to do this alone, that I thought for the first time that recovery was possible. And that's when my life started to change. And that's when I decided that I no longer wanted to suffer in silence, and that I was no longer going to carry that huge cloud and burden of shame and guilt. So even though the motivating factors for women to stop using are listed here, as I said, there's no one pathway, there's no one way. But if you're talking about statistics, those are the other reasons. Now, thinking about yourself or other people in your life that maybe you've experienced, or a client, what are some other reasons? Think about it. What are some other reasons that when a woman might stop using? Is it health related issues? Is it, a legal issue? Whatever the case may be, these are the major contributing factors for women that are stopping the use of substances. Next. So when, we turn that corner and we are now in recovery, right? We are in the beginning stages of recovery. It's painful. I know it was for me. You took away my best friend, and now I'm left with all these emotions and no way to get through it, with self-medicating, right? So I am like a walking sunburn. Everything hurts right now, everything. And I knew that I felt comfortable reaching out to another woman. And I knew that was my pathway. I knew that that was something that was waiting on the other side for me. And I took the bull by the horns. So the treatment and support that I received for my substance use disorder involved women helping women, right? It also involved therapy, and it also involved support groups. So the recovery process for women in general, it might involve therapy or support groups. It might also involve medically assisted treatment and other interventions as well, so that you can improve your overall well-being. Women in recovery also need to address issues related to relationships, parenting, and self-esteem. If you are looking at recovery as the solution, and we are looking at substance use disorder as the problem, but truly that was the solution to our problems. We need to fix who we are and work on who we are inside, so that we can then allow ourselves to recover and think that we're worth it. Women tend to think that we're not worth it, and we lack the self-esteem to be able to stand up and say, I deserve better. I deserve a healthy relationship. I deserve to be, free of the bonds that torn me down before, and all of the trauma that I've experienced. I am worth it. I am worthy. Therefore, I am on this path of recovery, and there's no turning back. Next. So as we continue the path to recovery, we're looking at different support systems. The importance of this cannot be understated. Family involvement, peer support groups, and community resources are essential for a woman's recovery. Women tend to recover better when they are in peer support groups. So women helping women, once again, I know I've said that 100 times, but it's true. It is statistically proven that that is one of the best pathways for recovery for a woman. Also, it is critical that a woman has the support of her family. It's one of the main reasons women stop using. It's one of the charging factors of why women tend to go back to use. And so if we're looking at this, the family dynamic, it can be, families are messy, right? Families are messy, but you need the support of your family to be able to recover, okay? And sometimes that's not possible. And sometimes we have to let go of toxic people, even if we're related to them. But it is about self-preservation and doing what's right for yourself. So you may be a woman in recovery, and you may have had to move away from toxic family members, and that's okay too. There is no one pathway. There is no right or wrong way. Whatever is working for that woman is what works best. We also want to make sure that we have proper community supports, whether that be a church or a relevant community organization that's going to help and support you, help you find a job, help you get back on your feet. It could be a counselor, it could be a therapist, anything in the community that is going to help support the long-term recovery of a woman. So another question that I posed here is, can you name a support system for only women in recovery, right? So it's only for women. I can name one. It's called Women for Sobriety, which is actually my employer, and this is where I work. This is my life's work. We are an international organization that helps other women recover, and we have been around. Next year we celebrate 50 years. I hope that you look into Women for Sobriety if you've never heard from us. We have been around next year for 50 years, and we touch women from all over the globe. And I am so grateful for this organization. And I do, hope that you do check us out. I am biased, right? But I do believe that, the work that we're doing is very, very important, because we are looking at all of these factors, and we are incorporating these women support groups so that we can help support, so that we can, as a community, wrap our arms around the new woman and say, you are not alone. We are all here for you, and we are going to be here for you. Next. So as we're looking at sustained recovery, right? Sustained recovery looks very different for different people. But as we talked about the specific barriers for women, seeking the sustained recovery from substance use disorder, stigma is a huge one. We talked about this. Stigma, it is an absolute domino effect for a woman, right? A woman feels judged by her friends, her family, healthcare provider, doesn't want to speak up. So then we retreat, we go back into our hole, we relive trauma, we have trouble getting childcare. And I don't want to paint a bleak picture, but we really have a lot stacked up against us as women when we're talking about trying to get to the other side of recovery or trying to hit that goal of recovery. Okay. And so one of the things that we can do is really respect the fact that there are differences between women and men when we're talking about substance use disorder and the recovery of women and men. Next. Some more of the sustained recovery. So again, the co-occurring mental health issues, that's not to say that men do not have the same thing. Women are more likely to have co-occurring mental health issues, such as depression, anxiety, and eating disorders, as I mentioned before. But these issues really complicate our recovery process. They are road bumps in this recovery process. And that's why we need a support system so much. That's why we need gender specific programming, gender specific support. We talked about the financial barriers. Again, another domino effect, directly related to childcare, directly related to lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The lack of social support that women get from supportive networks is far less than men. And you wouldn't think that. I know that we, think women talk more, they bond more, they get together more, but that's just not the case. There are more programs out there for men only than there are for women. And I hope that you all join me in trying to change that, because there are far more complication factors when you're talking about a woman getting into treatment, having access to treatment, staying in treatment, coming out of treatment, and having the support on the other side. Next. Recovery styles and strategies. So this is one of my favorite things because, again, recovery is not linear. We all do it differently, right? I mean, you don't have to go to jail to recover like I did, right? I hope not. Wouldn't recommend it, but the bottom line is that's what it took for me. But that's not why I stayed in recovery. That's how I got kind of scared straight, if you will. But the reason that I'm able to stay in recovery is because I added to my recovery and the strategies that I use. Gender specific programming, absolutely number one on my list. Peer support groups, absolutely right up there. Trauma informed care, yep. You need to go to a specialist to deal with whatever issues that you have. If you don't deal with what is going on inside you, it is going to keep coming up and keep coming up. And then you are going to have this feeling of being overwhelmed, and then you're going to be looking for an external solution. But we need to find the solution inside of us, because if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else is going to do it for you, and you have to be your best advocate. Next. More about recovery styles, holistic approaches. Again, when we're starting to feel good about ourselves, when we're in recovery, when we think we deserve to recover, when we think we are worthy, we start to add components. We start to add holistic approaches, mindfulness and yoga. And oh, by the way, fun. Who knew you could have fun in recovery? I didn't know that in the beginning. I'm walking around crying for 2 years, angry at the world because you took my best friend from me and my solution. But guess what? I'm having more fun in recovery than I ever did drinking. I mean, I don't, if I get pulled over today, I'm certainly not sitting there sweating bullets. I don't have to look over my shoulder or worry about anything because I'm not drinking and driving. I'm not making terrible choices. I'm not doing things that are, illegal or, things like that. I mean, I cannot stress enough that you can have fun in recovery. You can recover not just your substance use disorder, but you can recover mind, body, and spirit. And then what happens is you start to evolve as a human being, and then you put your hand out to the next woman that needs you. And isn't that a beautiful thing? I cannot stress enough that, if you know someone that's struggling, help them out. If you know someone that might have a problem or is talking about gray drinking or is talking about maybe drinking a little too much or something like that, no judgment. Do not go in with judgment. If you go in with judgment or if you chase a person with substance use disorder, they're never, ever, ever going to turn around and say, you know what, you're right. I think I'm going to go to therapy, or I think I'm going to, go and go to treatment. I mean, that may work sometimes, but truly doesn't work all the time. You may have someone that is experiencing substance use disorder that needs that medically assisted treatment, and that is under a doctor's care. And that is really an important factor when we're talking about getting through detox or getting through other periods of recovery. Family therapy. Woo, if you have family issues, there is not a person out there that doesn't have a family issue. I don't care who you are, where you come from. We all have family issues, okay? Some of us create them ourselves, but whatever. But some of us really need the therapy that kind of professional care and help can benefit, whether it is, marriage counseling or going with your parents or, going with your children. Sometimes it's really important for you to be in recovery in a way that is living your life so that when other people look at you, they know that you're in recovery. And I mean that to say, don't be afraid to share with people that you are in recovery. Encourage women to share that with their friends and family, because if those around you know what's going on, you would be shocked at the amount of people that will respect you far more than judge you. Self-care. I saved the best for last. Self-care. Whoo, there is a phrase I like to use called healthy selfish, okay? Because I know many women out there who are struggling to do it all, right? Work or take care of the kids or both, or take care of the family or whatever you're doing, okay? It's okay to take care of you. It's not selfish. It's called healthy selfish, right? You got to take better care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. I know we've all heard that before, and it's easier said than done. But I can assure you that when we are truly practicing self-care, doing things such as exercise or stress management, getting enough sleep, eating well, all of these things, you're going to feel a better overall sense of well-being, and that is going to make you stronger. That's going to make you feel less like, tired and angry and fussy and all those other things that we tend to get when, I know people joke about hangry. That's a real thing. I know when I'm hungry and tired, I am not fun to be around. However, when I take a step back and do what I need to do for myself, I'm much more pleasant to be around. Maybe. Next. And in conclusion, women are different. We already knew that. I'm hoping that you got something out of this today that you didn't know. I'm hoping that we can all look at women in recovery and the needs that we have and the differences that we have, and embrace the differences that we have, and start to move together as a society to create more opportunities for women to recover, so that we can create effective treatment strategies for women, and that we can be a leader in the role of support systems. And I left that blank on purpose. the role of support systems end. And that end stands for each and every single one of us. Whether you are a person in recovery yourself, whether you have clients that are in recovery, or whether you have clients that are still suffering from substance use, whether you're here because a family member is struggling, or whether you're just here because you're bored on a Wednesday afternoon. I don't care. Either way, we can all be in this together, right? You do have the power to make some changes and advocate that we add more to our society so that women do not feel like they have to recover alone. And that is such a huge, huge problem. I also want to really highlight the unique needs that women have in recovery. So in closing this, think about ways that you can contribute to supporting women in recovery. What does that look like in your profession, in your community, in your family, right? It could be something as small as not judging. It could be something as small as, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything about cousin Laura, because guess what? You know what? That could happen to you tomorrow, okay? So instead of judgment, practice empathy, care, and compassion. Practice love and support and acceptance. I mean, that is, that is for life, but specifically when we're talking about recovery. Next. So again, I want to thank everybody who came today to hear this presentation. This is something that is so important to me. And again, this is my life's work. That is a fancy picture of me, and I am not that fancy, okay? I love that picture, but I am as real as you're going to get, because this is a very deadly disease, but I take the recovery just as seriously. I don't take myself as seriously as I do my recovery, and you don't have to either. But at the end of the day, I am here to guide and help anyone who is either a woman that is looking to recover, knows someone that is looking to recover, or knows someone that could benefit from Women for Sobriety and any of the programs and supports that we have. And I believe we're going to open it up for questions. Thank you all for letting me come in and speak today. I really appreciate it. I mean, I talk a lot, as you can probably tell, and I'll talk anytime, but especially about something that I'm so passionate about.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shavitz. That was wonderful. And yes, now it is time for question and answer. We did have some folks submit some questions when they, registered for this webinar. So thanks to everyone who was able to submit some questions. So my first question to you is, do you have any tips on how to engage women clients in their recovery that might potentially have an aversion to the 12-step program?
Yeah, I mean, we here at Women for Sobriety, first of all, we don't judge. There's more than one pathway to recovery, right? But if you do have someone that comes to you or says, I tried a 12-step program and I didn't like it, there's nothing wrong with that. There truly isn't. What you can tell them is, first ask some questions. What didn't they like about it? Most of the time, it's probably because that specific meeting, or that specific 12-step meeting, was not geared specifically towards women. And if it was, maybe they just didn't feel comfortable. Ask very pointed questions to get to the bottom of why they didn't feel comfortable and what the aversion was. Because I can tell you, it could happen at any meeting, anytime, any day. Someone maybe says something that hurt their feelings. Help them work through that. Again, remember, a person in early recovery is like a walking sunburn, okay? And it's really difficult sometimes for a person to, open up and accept and absorb what others around them are trying to say and do. But just be kind and be patient and work through the issue with them, because there are other options out there. There truly are other options out there. 30 years ago, there were very, very, very few options. Women for Sobriety has been around, like I said, for 50 years. But there are very few options out there for women. And when we're moving into this phase, or this next, era of recovery, what is that going to look like? What is that going to feel like? We do a lot of things virtually. So sometimes that might be a little easier for your client too. Think about it this way. Sometimes we don't want to just show up somewhere. First, I don't want to show up somewhere where I don't know where I'm going sober sometimes, right? It's scary. But think about it, from your client's perspective. So ask the questions and then maybe look at other resources that might fit them. And keep trying things. That's another thing. Keep trying things. If something doesn't work, move on to the next thing, right? That's the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, thank you so much for just diving into some of those, different options that might be available, and then also diving deeper into understanding the patient's concern. I know that we're getting a lot of movement in the chat just around women for sobriety in general and some of the resources that are offered there. I know that you talked a little bit about this in your presentation, and I really love the metaphor they used in terms of, a walking sunburn, because it just paints such a vivid image in your mind. But what adaptations do you think that treatment providers and support systems can offer to better address some of those emotional and social factors that influence a woman's recovery, particularly during, life transitions or maybe early in a woman's recovery?
Honestly, I think one of the problems is that as human beings, we stick with what we know. We stick with what we know. Most practitioners know that 12-step programs work. Okay, they work, but they don't work for everybody. That's the problem. And that 90% of the time is their go-to, right? And you hear it all the time. Treatment providers will say, when you leave here, when you leave treatment, make sure you go to 90 meetings in 90 days, right? They don't even have to say what organization it is, because if you are recovering from alcohol, then it would be AA. If you're recovering from drug use, then it would be NA, or whatever the case may be. What a lot of practitioners don't do is give a menu of options. And wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if they had a menu of options? Because there really is a menu of options out there for recovery, right? Programs for men geared towards men, programs for women geared towards women. And I would absolutely say, again, ask the questions, because not everyone is the same, right? And what I also see is a disconnect between, you're in treatment and you are counseling someone, but then their discharge person might be different. Well, how do you know what they need? You haven't been counseling them the whole time. We need to make those connections, even in our own organizations, so that we can talk through what that might look like for the person who's leaving a facility, or if it's outpatient, what can you do for them? And how can you steer them into multiple pathways? I say give them their options and tell them, keep trying it until you find the one that fits you best.
I love that. Thank you. And then just one more question. And I know that this is a very nuanced question, but what considerations should be kept in mind when engaging with women of color who are in recovery? And I know that you spoke about some of the socioeconomic factors, but wondering if you could delve into this a little bit more.
Absolutely. Women of color are 4 times more likely than their white counterparts to not to reach out for help. Let me say that again. Okay, so I'm a white woman, and my friend who is a woman of color, she's not going to reach out for help. She is 4 times less likely to reach out for help. And the reason for that is because social stigma is they are so afraid that their healthcare provider is not going to take them seriously. Number one, that's a huge factor. Social stigma in their communities, that's huge, right? Culturally or ethnically, or whatever the case may be for the woman of color, is a huge barrier. It's a shame that we look at our society and think that women of color don't trust the healthcare provider to listen to them. And that is one of the biggest barriers, that they're embarrassed to share with their community that they have, substance use disorder. It's huge. It's absolutely huge that women of color are not reaching out for help. That's the biggest thing. Also, women of color are, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I'm almost absolutely sure, I'm almost sure, 7 times more likely to be a single mother than their white counterparts. Okay. And we talked about the socioeconomic barriers. So you're talking about a lot of single moms who are struggling, afraid to ask for help, afraid to be judged, thinks their healthcare worker or healthcare worker is not going to take them seriously. And even if they did, their community is not going to accept them, or they're going to shun them, or they're going to make them feel bad. And it is really, really a challenge. And, I know at Women for Sobriety, we are really looking for ways to reach out to women of color and to try to create programs that is going to speak and be more culturally sensitive. Because, again, we want to try to remove any barrier that there is for any woman in recovery.
Course. Thank you so much, Dr. Shavit. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll go ahead and drop the survey in the chat. Would love to hear how we did or just some feedback on the webinar. And again, we also shared some of Dr. Shavit's links, including her book, Broken as a Gift, and the website to Women for Sobriety. So thank you so much for joining, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.